Hello everyone. In this video, I want to talk about what it means for an idea to be embodied, embodiment of an idea. What does it mean when an idea is personified or embodied? It is possible for us to understand an idea like justice, truth, truthfulness, sincerity as an abstract concepts that we can be given, or we can try to give a definition of a concept like sincerity, like justice, like truth. It's another thing, maybe it is related, but it is different when an idea becomes expressed in the activity or in the form of life of a person. When an idea of justice or truthfulness or sincerity is embodied by someone in the character or in the activity of someone, the idea takes the form of, or it comes to life in the person's life, in the person's character, and in what that person does. So let's assume, and I think it is reasonable to assume, that we can grasp ideas in their embodied way, in a way that they come to life and they are expressed in a person's character. So when I observe a person's action and say, this action, this particular action is fair, or it is truthful, or it is resentful, or it is envious, that it is an instance of envious type of action. At the same time, I can also grasp what is behind the action, because the action is coming, presumably the action is coming from somewhere. It is coming from a relatively stable place that we can call the person's character. That this character is the wellspring. It is giving birth to these particular actions that are themselves not as stable. They're transient in time. They have a shorter lifespan. But the character of a person, although it might change, it is presumably more stable in time. So once we observe a person and their actions, let's say we start knowing a little bit more about what it means to be truthful by observing a truthful person. We observe them and their behavior, their response in one situation, in a second situation, in a third situation, and we begin to grasp what it means for a person to be truthful, for a character to be truthful. And we might imagine what this person would do, how they would behave in a fourth, fifth, sixth, 100th situation that we have not actually seen in our experience, because when we grasp a character, what we grasp is more general than particular actions and particular situations. Another way to say this is in terms of relatively subordinate and relatively superordinate concepts. We observe subordinate actions, particular actions, words that people say, relatively superordinate concepts like truthfulness, and even more superordinate concept of character, which is the stable wellspring of actions, particular actions. My thoughts on this topic are inspired by Saint Augustine's Confessions. There are three examples that are very notable in the Confessions of Augustine. In Book 6, we read about Augustine's encounter with a beggar. We read about how this beggar is happy and content, even though he's not really trying too hard. He's not on a path towards happiness and a spiritual fulfillment. So Augustine encounters and thinks about this beggar and becomes aware of himself and his path. And even though he himself is not content at the time and he's not happy, he doesn't want to necessarily switch places with the beggar, because it is not enough for him to have at the subordinate level, to have the feeling or quality of happiness, but he also wants to arrive at the state of happiness and contentment through the right path. Another encounter with the concept of character, personification, embodiment of idea is in the discussion of Augustine's friend Alypius in Book 6 also. We hear about Alypius, how he, under pressure, he first receives bribe, and then he receives threats from a powerful person who wants something done. And Alypius was an official at the time, having some administrative power, but he doesn't give in. So he embodies the concept of justice. In Book 8, we read about Victorinus, who is the personification of conversion through an intellectual path. So we read about how Augustine himself goes through a Platonic phase, and he comes out of Platonism, his Platonism, and comes into Christianity. And part of that journey is that he's being given the model, an example, personified example of Victorinus, somebody who himself also was a translator of Platonic works, but he comes to Christianity at the end. It was quite interesting for me to read about the debate between these two characters, Simplicianus and Victorinus. Victorinus is the one who is converting from being a Platonist scholar into Christianity. And he keeps telling his friend Simplicianus that in my heart, I'm quietly and secretly, I am now a Christian. And Simplicianus keeps telling him, you are not a Christian until you come into the building of the church, unless you are within the, I think that I don't remember the exact words, but you have to be within the confines of those four walls of the church. Until then, you are not a true Christian. And Victorinus says, so it is about the location, is the relative location to those four walls. Is that what makes a person a Christian? But he finally gets it, and I think the idea that he gets, it is related to the embodiments, like, because it is a body that comes within the four walls. It is the body that is confined in space. It's the body that is located somewhere and announces its position literally by being somewhere, by being visible somewhere. So a Christian is different from a Platonist or a scholar, because a scholar can entertain beliefs and ideas without really being somewhere, without being bodily visible, without expressing his position in a way that is embodied. So these are all relevant to Augustine's distinction between Platonism and Christianity, and how Christianity offers a kind of mediation due to the personification of ideas, to the personification of the idea of truth in the bodily figure of Christ, that gives us not only a mediation between the abstract concept of truth, truthfulness, and justice, but also combines it with whatever else is associated with the body, namely the passion that is intrinsic to being a body. Something else that comes with embodiment is being alive and being continually responsive, continually making decision, continually encountering new situations. When we are presented with an abstract notion of truth, that abstract notion of truth is frozen in time and it doesn't change. It cannot respond to changes in the situations, changes in the environment. But when an idea like justice or truth, is embodied in a person or embodied in a community, and that community is alive and continues to respond, then the idea itself can change through time, because it is corresponding to how the community or the person responds to what is new in the situation. So the idea of truth, the idea of what is just, the idea of what it means to be truthful, because of the continuing life in the community or continuing life of a person who is personifying, embodying the idea of truth, this concept itself can go through time and change, given the circumstances and situation at hand. Okay, I think that's good enough for now. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will speak with you next time.